And the remnants are like, we're fighting, we're in the trenches, fighting away, the enemy's like trashing the whole world, the whole church, and they're looking at us going, I just think that they're just a little bit, I don't know, they're so rubish. You know, yeah, that's ridiculous. The exact extent of how much and how often we're going to use live streaming is just going to depend on when we get it up and running, but we intend to have, what is it called, John? The live chat, everything that you would see at any other live stream we will have, but I'm really want to push, this is a team effort. We're really excited. We're not using Amazon. We're not using YouTube. We're not using any of the big tech components in this. This is us. This is us going underground, taking an independent approach to our programming so they can't touch us. They really can't. We rent CDN, content delivery networks around the world, and I'm really excited about what we're trying to do. The downside of that, of course, is we're doing it all ourselves. We have 4 or 5 guys in the studio here are making this happen. So what we wanted to do is just test this out, make sure the product is working well. If, in fact, you're experiencing any difficulties with audio or anything else, let one of our technicians know, and that would be very, very, very useful to us because, again, we want this to be a really good product. And then just a real quick thank you. Thank you for trusting in us. This has been a long ride, a long job trying to get this thing off the ground independently. It's been a big job, and it's cost a lot of money. And guess who financed most of it? You did. And we're so grateful for the generosity that you've shown from all over the world over the past couple of years making this happen. This is the studio that we promised we were going to, it's nothing elaborate, it's nothing huge, but it's more than adequate. And I think that if you were here, you would trust that it's not ostentatious, it's not braggadocious, it's just a simple, beautiful place that God has provided for us with your help to do this programming and hopefully to do it for a long time from down here in the underground. So I just want to say thank you. And this is a very informal program that we're offering tonight. It's kind of all about you. We need your help, of course, but we also want to thank you and just express our appreciation. Don't worry, you didn't miss anything. We didn't promote this at all. So this was a last-minute decision to try this live stream again out of consideration for our audience. If everything works fine, this program, of course, is being recorded and we'll put it up on Remnant TV as usual. So that's kind of what the point and purpose of tonight's program is. Very simple, very modest, but again, mostly in appreciation for what you're doing and to give you a chance to ask some questions. I don't know if we have any questions yet. If not, we do. Okay, Tess, go ahead.
So do you want to start with this one? A viewer from YouTube wants to know, what's the Remnants' relationship with YouTube moving forward?
Thank you for the question. That's perfect, because it fits right into what I was just trying to say. We are very strong believers that big tech is not going to make any changes. Now, we've all felt this sort of lifting a little bit of the net that they've thrown over conservatives over the past few months. I don't think it's going to stay that way. I think they're going to find something else to reinstate the net, if you will, to control, to throttle, put the noose around us, and literally make it so we can't speak. I think big tech is going to be in that game for a long time. And so we absolutely believe in using big tech efficiently as we make this transition over to total independence. And we already have a backup plan. This is the Remnant newspaper. This one is hot off the press. This is the ultimate backup plan. You can subscribe to this, by the way, online. We come out every 2 weeks. If everything gets shut down, well, that's the backup plan ultimately. And it's a beloved labor of love, that newspaper that my father founded a long time ago. But short of that, what the plan is to become completely independent from big tech. Now, I know we have 260,000 subscribers on YouTube. No, we're not going to abandon you. We've been fighting a hard fight with YouTube. Every strike that we get, every complaint that we get, every video of ours that's been taken down, I fight it tooth and nail at YouTube. I've even won a battle or two with YouTube. So I'm not going to abandon you if that's your favorite choice of where to watch your programming. So we're going to try to use YouTube as we've been doing. Sometimes you'll notice we edit our programs, especially if we're talking about COVID, we're talking about certain injections or things like that. We edit it back a little bit, so there's an RTV version of it, and then there's a YouTube version. So our plan is to exploit and use these jerks, at YouTube as much as we possibly can as we make this transition over. Our relationship is very cold, and I'd invite you to remember how this all happened with YouTube. If you are familiar with the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and Davos and all of that, chances are pretty good That's because of a video that we did back in 2020 about the World Economic Forum. I hadn't heard of it before I began to look into it. We did a video on that at YouTube, and that thing took off. It's something like 20 million views. And ever since then, YouTube has been really harassing us, I think for obvious reasons. So we want to be able to use YouTube effectively to reach a wider audience, but at the same time, we're under no illusions that it's going to last. It simply isn't going to, and that's where Remnant-TV.com comes in, working very effectively. And I'm really hoping right now the live stream is working good, but if it's not, we're going to get everything fixed up. That's the point.
Great.
Is it working good? All right, John assures me, our technician assures me that it's working good, so that's very good to hear. We have some folks from Ireland that just...
That's correct. Ireland, Portugal's
Portugal,
watching.
yeah.
Sure enough, and there's 3 folks from Canada that are watching.
Canada, they're still allowing you guys to watch videos in Canada. I thought the little ferret had shut you guys down completely. I'm glad you're with us from Canada. God bless you.
Why?
Why is that?
It's not YouTube. This is Remnant TV.
Exactly right. Remnant TV. Even the ferret can't control this. You guys have been putting up a huge fight, by the way. We're teasing you. I'm in Minnesota. We're only a couple hours, 3 or 4 hours from the border. Canada was always such a beautiful place to go. I can't believe what's happening to your country. My gosh, it's tragic. You're not alone. We're watching. We're praying for you. We're fighting that you continue to fight as you did with those magnificent truckers not too long ago. You just go ahead and interrupt me at any point with any questions that come in there.
I do have another one. It's going to change the subject a little bit, but Joe Cowboy from YouTube asks, you've been talking so much about Musk and Rogan. Do you think they're conservatives now?
This guy's name is Joe Cowboy.
Joe Cowboy.
I like a guy with a name like that. That's awesome. Joe Cowboy. Well, here's the deal. No, I don't think that Bill Maher and Elon Musk and Joe Rogan are conservative. Joe Rogan, if I ever had a conversation with him, I'd ask him to drop the Effenheimers, please, so maybe my daughters could watch now and then. But I'm following what's happening there. I think you folks who've been with me for a long time, been with us for a long time, you understand what I'm doing there. I'm so interested, friends, in not speaking to the converted all the time, in not preaching to the choir. And I believe there's this massive opportunity right now to reach a much, much wider audience. As I say with pride, practically every program, I know a lot of you are not even traditional Catholics. Many of you are Protestants. I welcome the conversations that we have. It's so important. You can understand why that would be. If you're just talking to people who already agree with you all the time, and you look out over your room and everybody's nodding at you, you kind of go, what's the point? You guys already got the message. Why should I even do this? So for me, it's such a great opportunity, and it's a gift from God. It's a special grace to be able to talk to folks who don't necessarily agree. And the exchanges that we have are hugely important. So I think you know that. I'm a traditional Catholic. I'm a proud traditional Catholic. I don't want to sit around and talk to traditional Catholics all day long. It's not interesting to me. So this audience is vibrant, is interested into the pursuit of truth, in good discussion, true dialogue, as we discussed on tomorrow night's program, The Underground. The left is not interested in dialogue at all. All they're interested in doing is shutting us down, shutting down any dissenting voice. They're the fascists. They're the racists. They're projecting all these horrible things on us when they're the ones that are guilty of that, as we'll see tomorrow night. But no, so when it comes to Bill Maher, for example, radical leftist forever. Rogan, I don't know that much about, but I certainly think he would not consider himself a conservative. Elon Musk doesn't consider himself a conservative. People say he's just one big giant troll. Well, I like the way he's trolling. Exactly, I like the way he's trolling the left right now. It's a lot of fun to watch. But what we have to see in those men is this incredible opportunity, because you know who makes the left, just enrages the left more than anything that I could ever say, or anybody, any conservative could ever say. It's folks like that, people that used to run with the left. And they turn around, they look at the mainstream left now, the liberals, what do you want to call them, progressives or whatever, the regressives, and they go, what the heck you guys doing? You all got like 4 heads. It looks like the cantina scene from Star Wars. These liberals are so bizarre now that just regular guys like Maher and Musk, these guys, well, I don't know if I call Elon Musk a regular guy, but you know what I mean. Just regular American folks really are not comfortable with what's happening on the left. Can you imagine being like a fan of Joe Biden or just a Democrat right now, and this poor guy is your president? Did you see where the Easter Bunny literally walked up and shut him down a couple days ago when he was trying to answer questions of the press? A giant Easter Bunny guy comes up and shuts the President of the United States down. We're going to show that tomorrow night if you haven't seen it. Totally embarrassing. So that's what these guys on the left are kind of seeing. And what's happening, we're staying where we've always been as conservatives, as, in our case, traditional Catholics. The left is moving to the left at such a rapid pace that everyone begins to sense we're running out of time. So a guy like Bill Maher, these guys, what are they saying? They're saying, conservatism at this point isn't necessarily about, what it used to be about, smaller government, lower taxes, and all of those sort of pocketbook issues or whatever. Conservatism now means that you're standing up for private property, for heaven's sakes. Conservative now means maybe you like to drive a car and you'd like to keep it beyond 2030. Thank you very much, Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab, who want to take the cars away. And you don't have to be a conservative in the old school sense to say, man, I want nothing to do with the future that these guys have in mind for us. So when I say, they want to literally throw us out of our houses, make everything green, get people out of the suburbs and move them all into the city and everything. Well, you might think that sounds paranoid and crazy until you think about what the number one slogan associated with the World Economic Forum actually is, which is, you will own nothing and be happy. And they're serious as a heart attack about that. The World Economic Forum is as serious as a heart attack about that. They literally are going to make it so people don't own anything. So I think when you have discontent setting in on the left and some of these major influencers, social, cultural influencers like Bill Maher, like Elon Musk, like Joe Rogan, you got to open the tent up a little bit and say, hey, look at what those guys are saying. You got to kind of let them talk because they now are also focusing in on the same enemies that we've been focusing in for a long time as traditional Catholics, 50, 60 years, going after these globalist, big government, world-dominating, freaks, James Bond villain characters, who are now calling the shots all over the world.
This is such a great question to follow up.
Yeah.
Mary from Twitter is wondering why the Remnant, which used to be more about the traditional Latin Mass, seems now to be very involved in politics. So, what do you think should be the Remnant's involvement in politics considering this current climate?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't know where this comes from. I guess we need to do a lot more work on that because the idea of the separation of church and state is a myth. It is a condemned error. You have magnificent popes such as Pope St. Pius X, who called it a grave error. I think back in 1907 was the encyclical. I believe it was in Pascetti, but it may have been in the other one, another one. But in any case, he said this is wrong. The separation of church and state, it's impossible. So as traditional Catholics, I think the progressive wing of the Catholic Church, which is mostly the mainstream church period now, would love to see traditional Catholics just talked about those smells and bells. We just like those Latin masses. They're so fantastic. But see, that's never been what the Remnant was all about. That's never been what Michael Davies or Walter Matt or Archbishop Lefebvre was all about. Of course, they fought for the Latin Mass, as Mary from Twitter, I guess, notes that was always the raison d'etre. That was the central thing. That was the rock. That was the unifier, the touchstone of the faith. But as Catholics, you have the obligation to form yourself as a Catholic, as a soldier of Jesus Christ for a reason. It's not a selfish thing. And in the little bit of time that you're given on this earth by Almighty God, you've got to do everything you possibly can to defend and to support and to build up what? The social kingship of Jesus Christ. That's the entire point. So if you think of traditional Catholics as just a bunch of Latin buffs and snobby people who like to just smell the incense and speak in Latin and talk about Gregorian and fiddlebacks and all of that, that may be very amusing for some, but that is not what traditional Catholicism was when I was young. How do I know? Because I was there at the beginning. I knew the pioneers. I was confirmed by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. I played at the feet of Michael Davies as a child. Walter Matt raised me. I remember these guys. They were political to the core, as soldiers of Jesus Christ must be. So I would love to see over the next few months now, as this 2022 is going to be an interesting year politically, for traditional Catholics, for conservative patriots, for Protestant folks, also very conservative, also having problems in their denominations, whether you're Baptist, Lutheran, or whatever, the leftward push, to realize that all of us need to focus on putting Christ first, as king, as a social king whose law influences everything. Because what we have going on in society right now is the absence of his law. And what does that mean? That means chaos. So absolutely the remnant's going to stay involved in politics. It's pretty much a 50-50. Yeah, we talk about problems in our church, but the reason we want the Catholic Church to be strong is because we need the Catholic Church to influence the political sphere. We need to go into the square and fight and defend as soldiers of Jesus Christ. That is always and forever going to be political. And we'll do more shows on this, but it should be as obvious as the day is long. The traditional Catholic must be a political animal. Absolutely, that's what we do.
Fantastic. And this question, I think, dovetails well, too. Rob Symington from Twitter asks, do you feel like traditional Catholicism has been vindicated in the last few years? And if so, why is there still so much snobbery towards traditionalist outlets?
That's a hard question to ask without me getting a little annoyed. Because, and I'm not annoyed for myself. I don't care if you want to make fun of the Rube, guy who's talking traditional, he's not sophisticated. It doesn't matter to me. But what bothers me about it is, again, those pioneers, those great pioneers of this movement, guys like Lefebvre and Davies and Hamish Fraser and Arnaud de la Suze and Walter Mall, all these guys, they literally gave up everything for this cause. Okay, now I'm going to be very brief. This is before there was any Latin Mass, for example. There wasn't any Latin Mass. It was gone. They were told it was abrogated. It was gone forever. It was illegal. Those guys gave up everything, from jobs to position in the church. My own father walked out of a 100-year-old newspaper, his family newspaper, just quit in order to resist the spirit of Vatican II, resist the liturgical revolution. They gave up everything. And then for the next 20, 25 years, it was mockery. There was nothing more passé than these stodgy old traditionalists. Everything was John Denver tunes and felt banners, and everything was so clappy happy, and they're tearing apart the sanctuaries and making a mess of the church. Those guys gave up everything for the cause. And now that it's been completely vindicated, I think we can prove that it has been. Pope Benedict XVI actually came along and said, no, the Latin Mass was never abrogated. You know this. And this was like, the traditionalists were like, oh my gosh, we've been saying that for 30, what? The Pope just admitted the thing we were saying for 30 years, because what they were saying is traditional Catholics, you think you're more Catholic than the Pope by going to your Latin Mass. Well, then Benedict comes along and says, yeah, they were right. They were right. Traditionalists were right. And so, yeah, I do feel really defensive of the pioneers of this movement who gave up so much. And then you have people now who just discovered the Mass 20 minutes ago, and I like the Latin Mass, and they'll get on their little YouTube channels, and they're talking about, discernment and mission and all these little words that are so safe. They're going to do some scripture reading. And the remnants are we're fighting, we're in the trenches, fighting away, the enemy's like trashing the whole world, the whole church, and they're looking at us going, I just think that they're just a little bit, they're so rubish. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Because we want those people. We want the largest coalition possible. There's no told you so going on here at the Remnant. We don't want that. We've always wanted to be part of an army, of a massive movement, and that's happening right now. And so for these folks to still have these sort of 20-year-old talking points and snobbery when it comes to the traditionalists, because now they've been vindicated, we don't want any part of that. I think this might be the first time I've ever even mentioned it, because why? What is my mantra, my slogan? Unite the clans, friends. I don't want to be the leader of this movement. I don't want the remnant to be the only one standing. I want a lot of different groups all over the world to stand up and to fight back. The more that we have, the better. So all those neo-Catholics out there who are kind of, butthurt, I guess, because tradition has been so completely vindicated, I would say drop it. Come on. Look what they want to do to all of us. You get far enough over to the left, and there's no difference between Michael Matt and John Henry Weston and Matt Fradd or whoever's sort of in the middle of all of that. There's no difference. They see us all as fanatical, bomb-throwing racists that need to be crushed, and that's what they're going to do. So everybody who's taking part in this war right now, no matter where you are, stop looking to the folks to your right and saying, well, they're too extreme because I'm not that far. They're a bunch of schismatics because if you're to the right of me, you must be a schismatic. You must be a terrible person. That's counterproductive, and it's ridiculous. So if you want to still be looking down your nose at traditionalists, fine, we really don't care, because the vindication has been so incredibly unexpected and of God and complete, and something we never expected to see when we were young. We never thought we were going to see these guys be totally vindicated like they have been. And if you had any doubt, running through Summorum Pontificum, where the traditional Mass was brought back, and Benedict was trying to restore tradition of the Church to some extent. If you had any doubt of that vindication, well, obviously Francis proves it beyond any doubt. Francis is the fulfillment of the nightmare predictions that traditionalists were making 50, 60 years ago. And you know it. Those of you who are just starting to kind of wake up to what's really happening here, you understand that Francis is a massive problem. A massive problem, which is what the traditionalists were warning against. If we don't restore tradition, the foundations, the roots of the faith, that there's going to be a trickle-up effect, if such a thing exists, until ultimately one of these modernists, one of these radical liberals would be all the way to the top of the church. And when that happens, since the church is hierarchical, we got problems. So as traditional Catholics, we know the church is hierarchical. The church is also for God to save. So we don't sit around and say, we're going to save the church. We're just doing our part as best we can to help save the human element of the church. Ultimately, God has to do it. But we're in the middle of a very, very dangerous time right now. And that's another thing, I think, around which clans all over the world are united, looking at Francis and going, oh my gosh. I mean, there are a lot of Protestant fellows that are so scandalized by what this guy's doing. You don't have to be a conservative Catholic or even a traditional Catholic. You don't even have to be a Catholic to look at Francis and say, this is scary, because the Catholic Church is supposed to be a moral authority, the moral authority of the world, and all of a sudden, climate change is more important than Jesus Christ, the law of God, than natural law. Just they've completely shifted from a man-centered, human sort of, celebrating man, sort of brotherhood of man has replaced the kingship of Christ. It's a huge problem. So I went on too long for that answer. Do you have any?
Well, I'm not sure. I think I'm going to have you prolong it a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
I think that it's interesting, the vindication part, the fact that people like your dad and Michael Davies and all that were right, with Bishop Lefebvre, that sort of, I think that should give people a certain amount of comfort even, and clarity. Because they were right, which meant if they said everything is going to go really badly, if all of these problems keep happening, they looked forward and said it's going to end like this, in chaos. If that didn't happen, would that be a little bit Chicken Little? Or something like that?
I mean, where they wouldn't have been vindicated, so yeah, they were just
paranoid.
paranoid.
If nothing bad happened, and it was just them sitting around going, but it will be, and then it never did. Yeah, exactly. I think people should take so much comfort from that, because
I absolutely agree with you, because what they always said, this is why I so love these guys, and there are men that are taking their place now, and I'll die for these guys because they have the same spirit. They don't care about their opinion. The pioneer traditional Catholics did not care about their opinion. What they stood on, and they use the expression oftentimes, we stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on authority. What my father was once called an encyclical thwacker, because every time he got in a bind, he'd use another encyclical that a pope had written to make his point. And he was very proud of that. He said, nobody should care what my opinion is, other than the opinion that we must follow the law of God. We must follow the law of the church. Don't invent anything. They have handed tradition down to us. It's our job to live that tradition and hand it down to our sons and daughters. That's it. We don't add anything. We don't subtract anything. So I think you're right. I think that the fact that it has gone as they predicted, Christ or chaos, is a vindication that's got a beautiful silver lining. Because now we can say, wow, they really were absolutely right. Look at the cities, they're in chaos, they're burning down. Why is that? Because God's law is not being respected, the Ten Commandments are being torn down, and there's not enough police in the world to police the chaos that comes if you abandon the kingship of Christ. So in that, in the fact that they were right, not as prophets, but as guys that just understood what was going to happen if you took out that influence of the church and the kingship of Christ, we know what to do now. The restoration. And the restoration of the kingship of Christ can happen in this room, it can happen in here, it happens in our family. In other words, it's not something we have to wait until we have 1 million people to have a consensus. You can proclaim the kingship of Christ immediately, today, once you understand what it is. And that'll trickle out through your children, through their friends, through school. That's what we do. We got something very tangible to do right now.
And what about the word traditionalist then? Because that sounds like what your father, Michael Davies, again, all of them were doing, was just being Catholic. Do you think it would be time at any point in the future to retire the word traditionalist and go back to just Catholic?
It's a fantasy of mine.
Is it?
It is, because it's redundant and it's something that's unfortunate. As I've said before, we do it for expedience sake because Nancy Pelosi says she's a Catholic. So we want to make sure that we have nothing to do with that wing, the Joe Biden, Pelosi wing of the Cuomo brothers or you know what I mean?
Then call them something else.
Well, that's a great, apostate would be a good place to start with that, heretics. But I think that it is something that can kind of fade away. And I'm beginning to see that happening maybe sooner than we thought, because if you look at the Novus Ordo and what's happening there, the churches are closing. We're going to talk about it in tomorrow's show. The churches are closing down. All the Catholic schools are gone. All the Catholic nuns are gone. The orders of priests are gone. What is the only thing in the church that's thriving right now? Tradition. That really is it. I mean, that's it. The vocations are there, the large families, the homeschool movement is just, very, very strong. So, yeah, I think that when you look at that, you can understand what has to happen, and then what's going to come out of that is, that's Catholic, because the thing that is the ape of God, the ape of Catholicism, in many ways is ceasing to exist. It's disappearing right before our eyes right now.
That was beautiful. I have another question for you.
All right.
It just came in. What's your attitude on Catholic Action, and what's the plan for the immediate future? But they want specifics, please.
You mean as far as the Remnant is concerned on the TV, or?
Your attitude on Catholic Action.
Well, again, Catholic Action, if it doesn't result in action, this is one of the problems I have with some of my brother traditions, especially the ones that are kind of new to the movement, and they have that sort of new convert syndrome, which is beautiful, and we want to encourage that. But they act as though attaining the traditional Latin Mass is an end in and of itself, which it isn't. It has to end up in the call to holiness. It has to end up in Catholic action as well. I mean, the whole idea of being a practicing Catholic, frequenting the sacraments, using the traditional sacraments, making sure your children are formed in the traditional liturgical tradition of the Church, is so that they become activists in that religion. In the true religion, and there's all sorts of ways of doing that, but Catholic action must be part, and this again comes from the great popes, Pius IX, Pius X, Pius XI, Pius XII. Action is really necessary right now. So what did, people like to quote Fulton Sheen for saying that, the laity would help save, that would be very instrumental in saving the Church. Well, they're not going to do that just by saying their beads and just by going to Mass. They have to become active in the public square. So what we think is very important is to form yourself first, understand the importance, learn the polemics, learn what the real arguments are, read papers like this to find fundamentally what it all means.
Show it to them.
Yes, indeed. Once again, the Remnant. Base yourself, root yourself in an understanding of what it means to be Catholic, and then action comes from that, whatever it might be. You might be a pro-life nurse or something. You might be a pro-life lawyer. For younger people, grow up and become lawyers and go out and fight the legal battles that are being fought all over. We had one of our guys, Chris Farrar, was actually sued the governor of California, the governor of New Jersey, I think it was New York, over the mask mandates. And for Professor, this is the kind of action. I don't know exactly what it's going to take for everybody. It depends on what your skills are. But we need to have activists, and you have to have an action-oriented outlook once you become a traditional Catholic. So in our case, we try to come up with ways of informing that first part, the first fundamental part, informing people on what it's all about. So we use things like the Catholic Identity Conference, which is coming up in Pittsburgh, the end of September, I think it is.
Yes.
Yes. Anybody know the date on that? Well, we'll throw it up on
through the 2nd of October.
Right.
Okay, the 2nd of October, end of September.
Yeah,
And we're going to have a lot of Catholic activists there, by the way. Bishop Schneider's going to be back as long as they let him in the country. So it's going to be a great event.
John Henry Weston will be there.
Yeah, John Henry, exactly. LifeSite News will be there. I'm really excited about having John Henry back. So we're really looking forward to it. But that's the kind of thing that you do. You have a conference like that, bring everybody in, not just to run their mouths, but to give a presentation on their notion of action.
Or simply come.
Yeah, exactly.
People that come are doing something too.
Right. The folks that come to the thing are there, because they come together and they form these networks. And you can't really, nobody wants to be Don Quixote, jousting with windmills by yourself. So we have, 700 people at that conference probably at least this year. And alliances, literal alliances, kind of in a church militant sense, in a militant, soldier of Jesus Christ sense, are formed there, and action comes out of that. And I would argue there's never been an easier time to be active than right now. Catholic Action, look at you can reach. We used to have to put this thing out. When I first started doing this newspaper, we were using cameras and we were using wax and we were cutting out the text and laying it down on boards and taking a picture and using metal plates on that. It was a lot of work. Now if you have an idea, you can get it a lot faster for action. So I think that the Remnants' the whole idea is that we are soldiers of Jesus Christ, literally. We'll fight in whatever form that war requires. In a month, we're going to be doing the Shark Pilgrimage. Now that is another example, and I hope some of you can join us. I know a bunch of our friends from I'm so excited about this, because we all began to think, with the way the globalist situation is going, and Klaus Schwab and all the craziness going on at that level after COVID, that those who are not jabbed might never actually be allowed back into the European Union. I see in the collapse of all of that narrative, of the restrictions and the lockdowns, I see the hand of God in that. That's not to suggest for one moment that I think it's over, because they've invested way too much. They're coming back. But at the moment it's collapsed, and it's collapsed at a time that's going to allow the worldwide traditional Catholic movement to get together. I say traditional Catholic because that's who organizes it, lay people, laymen, traditional Catholics, but everybody's there. People who are new to tradition, even some Protestants. We had great talks with Protestants on the road to Chartres who want to know what Christendom was all about, what the Catholic Church is all about. This is going to happen again now in a month. We're going to have this chance to bring all the clans together from all over the world, literally all over the world, but at least 10, 15,000 people. The average age, 20 years old. And it's going to be dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It's going to be just such a beautiful thing to get back and to say, you know what, we kind of won around here. I know we got shut down, and it was really scary for the past couple of years, and a very uncertain, very terrifying time, but guess what? In many ways, it made us stronger, more committed to fight, have more clarity right now than I probably have ever had. I hear this from a lot of people. When you see what they want to do to us, to the world, to everybody, not just us, but to everybody, lock them down. What's happening in China and Shanghai right now? Well, look what they got in mind. These people that don't follow the traditional, they don't follow the law of God, they don't follow the Ten Commandments, look what they have in mind for the world, That's a terrifying thing. So for a while it was like, is this it? But God always seems to come up with a way to let you know they're not going to win. Now, of course, they're not going to win the war, but they're not even going to win the rounds anymore. You know what I mean? They're not even going to win the battles, ultimately. They get too eager, they're too sick, they're too twisted, they jump the shark, as the old expression goes. That's happening right now, opens up this opportunity, and everybody's jumping in to do something about it. So we're going to go to France to do this great walking pilgrimage from Paris to Chartres, 3 days, sleeping on the ground, making the alliances, setting up the strategies for action. But there are many other things that can be done. And of course, we're going to keep doing action like this from Remnant TV, from the newspaper, on the website, and a lot of friends of ours who are doing the same thing. Stronger coalition than we've ever had, more clarity than we've ever had. And I think out of that, we're basically going to say to these guys, never again. Your little 15 days to slow the spread, we're not falling for anything like that ever again. So please, friends, one message from our sort of fly-by-night live stream show tonight, keep that thing in mind. Don't stop fighting. Not right now. I know the mask came off from the airplanes and the airports, and it was fantastic, and it's such a wonderful feeling. But don't let your guard down, because they're going to be coming back. But for the moment, we have a chance to fight harder than ever before, with greater clarity than we've ever had, knowing now full well what their true agenda is. That, I think, is a huge grace. It's a wonderful thing that was not anticipated, I think, by the COVID thing. It's the silver lining of COVID.
Now, I know we're going to go soon, and I don't know if this will make you uncomfortable, but I think that you should give Julie a big thank you, because here's Julie. She's right here in our comm box.
Julie, all right.
She says, "Hello, Michael, Matt. I just want to thank you. You were highly instrumental in getting me baptized this past weekend by Father Burfitt. We know him. You, my son, and your YouTube video back in 2020 highlighting Davos and the New World Order woke me up. I've been listening to you now for over 2 years."
Oh my gosh.
Does
Really? This is well, yeah, but it kind of chokes me up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is Julie, right? That is absolutely what it's all about. You've touched me deeply with that, because if we don't have that, if you don't have indications of victory, a sign that God is of course, is all the operation of grace. Anyone would ever take credit for something like that. But you know that the little bit of work that you did in combination with the prayer life of Julie or somebody praying for all of us and the grace of God at this moment brings people back. When we get email like that, it's just so, it's such proof that we're not alone, that God is still in his heaven. He hasn't abandoned us. We have so many people in the church, outside the church, at the highest levels of the church, who are basically giving the impression that God has abandoned us. They go on and on and on about climate change as though God can't even take care of his own world anymore. It's just going to suddenly burn up out of control because God's not in control. I mean, that's the message that they convey. So when you see things like this, people hanging on to the faith, we just saw yesterday, the AP is reporting that homeschooling now is stronger than it's ever been. And there are parents all across this country, even though now the schools are opening up, they're staying at home because they understand what's going on. That's another grace that people are being given right now. So Julie saying what you said there, we gotta just, that comes with a responsibility. When we figure out that we helped each other out like this, the responsibility is we got to stick together, we got to unite the clans, and then we go, man, we got even more clarity, even more grace in this darkest time. Julie sends this letter to me that makes me want to fight harder than ever. And I want to fight, and Julie wants to fight. She's coming back. Just keep making that happen, friends. They have these enemies of Christ, enemies of the church. They have no answer for what just happened to Julie. They have no answer for what we're talking about. All they have is death, contraception, culture of death, murdering babies. They got nothing. And we have the light of Christ in our life. No matter what they do to us, it doesn't really matter, does it? When you have the faith, as we all are manfully hanging on to and promising to hang on to forever. Well, maybe they're going to take us down. Maybe the worst comes to worst. We got to be persecuted. We die sooner than we thought. Well, look at me. I'm not a young man. I'm going to be dead in 30 years at best, probably. So what? But the idea of keeping the faith despite everything that they throw at you and not letting them intimidate us and become afraid and back down from our beliefs, that's the nightmare. That's when they win. And if you have this thing, the Catholic faith of following Jesus Christ, you've got this sort of secret weapon that you can be nervous about what they're going to do, these globalist people and the folks in the Vatican. But at the end of the day, you're like, they really can't touch me as long as we keep believing. And I think that's why what Julie's just saying right there, if we all could just commit to that, bring people into this fight lovingly. We got so much going on here, so much wonderful reason to live and to have hope, which they don't have. So we said the other day that, the future is only going to be there for those who show up for it.
Right.
And you know what? We're going to show up for it. Our children are going to show up for it. We're going to be there while the culture of death all around us commits suicide. So what's there to be afraid of? Mm-hmm. Why lose hope?
There's also a great Mexican Costero saying that they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds.
Really?
No.
I love that. Seeds.
Seeds.
That's cool. See, that's cool. Viva Cristo Rey on that.
Plant those roots.
Yeah. Well, we've got plenty of other questions. I'm just looking at I don't know we've only done one live stream in the past, and it was a special thing for an elections. I don't know much about live stream in terms of how long it should go, and I don't want to
just go
bore
ahead and wrap
people.
up when you're ready, maybe.
Yeah, okay. Well, this I hope this has been beneficial. I hope that if you want to see more, what we want too is like some suggestions for the type of program. We're not going to change our main Sunday night show. That's been a real success. Thank you, by the way. That thing has just taken off despite YouTube's efforts to shut it down. Thanks to you. That show isn't going to change. It's always going to be like it is now. We may add in a Q&A session or something like that using the live stream. But what we thought we would do is we'd just look for some input from you, our audience, which is just the most loyal, awesome audience in the world, in my opinion. What would you like to see? Not that I can accommodate every request, but maybe we can take a little poll in order to get a consensus. Would you like to see more guests come in? I really don't know, because sometimes people think, I don't need to get a guest every single time, and then they get the guest and people get tired. They want to just listen to the guy. So it's difficult to say what people are looking for right now, but we're wide open to suggestions. The main thing is just, thanks for everything you're doing, for keeping us buoyed and hopeful and ready to fight. And, you really truly are what it's all about. You really are what it's all about. If you weren't out there, I can't imagine being narcissistic or crazy enough to continue to do these shows. But these conversations that we're having, you lift us up. We keep the faith. We keep the fight. We unite the clans. Thanks for everything. God bless you all. And tune in tomorrow night for the Remnant Underground, 7 o'clock premiere over on YouTube and also at remnant-tv.com. God bless you all. Thanks so much for doing this experimental live stream with us. Hope it all worked well, and we'll be talking to you soon. Have a good night.